We have to start this off from the facts. There is a motif that this country has always been a nation of immigrants. That is not true. It is not true. When you have migration at the rate this country has had it in recent years, you have to expand and water down your definition of what you are, because you have people coming in so fast that what would have been your definitions of yourself stop holding.
Douglas Murray's recent speech on immigration has sparked intense debate and scrutiny, particularly his assertion that Britain has experienced excessive levels of immigration in recent decades. Murray argues that this rapid influx of immigrants has fundamentally altered the demographic landscape of England and Wales, posing challenges to the traditional concept of British identity. In this video, we will delve into Murray's key points, examine the implications of his arguments, and consider various perspectives on this contentious issue.
I'm so fed up of the double standards on all of this. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Muslims have been killed in the last 12 years by Bashar al-Assad and other Muslims in the civil war in Syria. There's no one on the streets of Sydney or Melbourne. There's no one on the streets of London. We have seen hundreds of thousands of people killed in the last decade in Yemen, Muslims being killed. There's no one on the streets of Melbourne. Nobody is standing outside the Sydney Opera House calling gas the Hutu, or gas the Houthi, gas the Shia, gas the... Nobody's marching for the dead Muslims in Yemen. Their co-religionists, we're always told about, care so much about their co-religionists, don't give a damn about their co-religionists. They really don't. Muslims do not love other Muslims. They have no love for them. They have no love for the Palestinian peoples. None. If they had any, the Jordanians would have taken in the West Bank Palestinians, the Egyptians would have taken in the territory they used to run, the Gaza, and own the Gaza, and they would have taken in the Palestinians from the Gaza. Why have the Egyptians made sure that not one Palestinian is allowed to leave Gaza? Why do they make sure that their border wall is tough as anything? What do they mind? One thing: Jews living. Jews living and Jews winning. It hits them deep in their soul, in their psyche. It's an ancient, ancient hatred. Perhaps the most ancient among the monotheisms. And the deepest and the ugliest, the nastiest. And the one that has been least addressed. And we've imported it. As we sit here, roughly the same population of Gaza is being forcibly moved by the government of Pakistan. Almost 2 million Muslims are being moved by the Pakistani authorities into Afghanistan. Okay, we have a very large Pakistani community here in the UK. If their country of origin can do that, why can't we? If it comes to that, if it has to come to that. Why does nobody notice this? Why is nobody saying this is an appalling war crime by the Pakistani government? Well, only because there are so many Pakistani politicians and others in the UK and other countries who have a deep connection to their country of origin and would never want to see it looked at in a bad way. They will not criticize that. They haven't said a word about that. So, no, I think that if you are zooming in on Israel, lambasting Israel, and are basically not bothered with everything else in the world, you're not motivated by anything other than being anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, of course. And it just has to be said. I mean, I've said this so many times that I tire myself with it, but it's necessary to say anti-Semitism is a shapeshifter. It's a shape-shifting virus. It can come from anywhere. At times in the past, it was the case that people didn't like Jews because they were seen to be a different religion and strange and different, and so they were hated for their religion. Then after the wars of religion, you couldn't hate anyone for their religion, so people started to hate the Jews for their race. Then after the Holocaust, you couldn't hate people because of their race anymore, so people hated the Jews because of their nation. On and on.
To start, Murray emphasises the scale of immigration in Britain over the past few decades. He points to statistics showing a significant increase in the number of foreign-born residents, citing nearly 3 million additional people in England and Wales alone within the last decade. This demographic shift, Murray contends, has led to profound changes in communities, with certain areas of London now having minority populations of white British residents.
Well, with me now are Shalina Litt, a writer and a blogger who's also a child behaviour specialist. I'm also joined by Sahar Al-Faifi, a community activist who's also a molecular geneticist. And Fatima Barkatullah is the director of the Seeds of Change Muslim Women's Conference, the largest of its kind in Europe. Also here are the writer and commentator Douglas Murray, Kola Hassan, who's a lecturer and advisor on Islam, and last but not least, the writer and broadcaster Yasmin Alabai-Brown. Can I just begin with you, Fatima?
Yes.
56% of British people don't really support the wearing of the full face veil in public. They don't want it.
Well, I think it depends on where you take the poll, really, because, something that I've recently launched is a project called Secrets of a Muslim Woman, and it's all about letting people know why we do what we do, because I think a lot of it is to do with not really being familiar with it. You know, I mean, my message to the British public is that you've got nothing to fear. You know, this is a piece of cloth.
They don't feel that, though, do they? Because elsewhere in this poll, a majority said they don't know how to relate to a woman wearing a full face veil.
I think, you know, the people who have actually interacted with women who wear the face veil, people who work with them. I mean, we're in East London today. In East London, the veil is practically, you know, normal on the streets of East London. People who've actually interacted and worked with women who wear the veil have absolutely no problem with it.
Douglas
I think
Murray,
it's the fear of the unknown.
Douglas Murray, would you like to see the veil banned here?
Well, I think, like a majority of British people, I think that it should be banned in public places, particularly places like courtrooms, where it's absolutely imperative that a jury are able to see the faces of people who are accused. As for an overall ban, I think, look, my own opinion is that niqab is highly undesirable. I think that we live in a society where people do show their faces, where huge amounts of our social interaction depend on people showing their faces. I think that it's very difficult to enforce a ban in public places like streets, but it should be certainly a desirable thing to discourage its wearing.
To impose a ban, but in principle you'd like to see one because you think in Britain it's unacceptable.
In public buildings, in courts, in schools and places like this, absolutely, I think a ban would be very sensible. In streets and so on, I think it's difficult, but it should be societally discouraged.
Fatima?
No, a ban, I mean, I think it's a complete overreaction. Look, the niqab has been part of the British landscape for the last 20-odd years, OK? Muslim women have been going about their business. We've got a radio presenter here, we've got a scientist, we've got talented Muslim women who've got a lot to give to this society, who've been doing so and been very sensible about it. When we need to remove our face veils, we do it. But how do you think we get through airport security?
I mean, what about the fact that 56% of people are saying they don't want it here?
You know what? I'm not surprised at all, because when you know that high-profile politicians making such offensive comments and big fuss about it, I am not surprised when the public say they are against it.
We show our faces.
Exactly. The British society, the fabric of the British society is respecting the public freedom.
We are British.
Public freedom is part of it, the religious freedom.
What about the fact that people feel
practice.
uneasy? They said they don't know how to relate to women who have their faces covered.
First of all, let them interact with us. Let us be open and engaging with them. This is number one. Secondly, 80% of communication in the world does not involve face-to-face. Twitter, Facebook, phones doesn't involve face-to-face communications. The issue is the problemization here. It's not existent problem at all.
I'm sorry, I worked in this area for 7 years, about 15 years ago, and this was not, as you said, a norm. This has been imported and exported for reasons which we haven't got time to go into. We live in a society...
Central to Murray's argument is the notion that such rapid demographic change challenges traditional understandings of British identity. He posits that while immigration historically enriched societies through diversity, the current rate and scale of immigration risk diluting or erasing distinct national identities. Murray laments that what it means to be British is becoming increasingly nebulous as new new arrivals reshape social norms and cultural practices. Moreover, Murray critiques the economic justifications often cited in support of high immigration rates. He dismisses the argument that immigrants are necessary to fill labour gaps in sectors such as healthcare and hospitality, branding it as patronising and economically unsound. Murray argues against the exploitation of foreign labour for low-wage jobs, suggesting it undercuts wages and working conditions for all workers, including native Britons.
In this society, and we live in a country which is very, very complicated, and to shut yourself off as if the rest of us are infections and cutting because you do not.
This is the meaning.
We are engaged. We are active. How are we shut off?
Shalina, you have said that in engaging with your elderly white neighbour who feels uneasy, sometimes you remove the veil. When you worked with children, you remove the veil. Isn't that an acknowledgement that it is difficult for people to engage with women who have their faces covered?
Yeah, I think it is. And I also honour what Douglas Murray has just said. He couldn't actually feel comfortable, and you know, I'm making a presumption here, but you couldn't say, let's do an outright ban. And that's great, because I understand you look at social cohesion. It's about looking at, let's isolate it. Whose discomfort are we going to favour? Because if I lift my veil, I'm then uncomfortable. And we've favoured someone's discomfort.
We live in a society, but I don't believe in the French ban. I don't think you should do that.
But why
absolutely,
not? If you're opposed to it,
no,
if you
I think there
is
a very simple way of saying, and a non-racist way of saying, in public institutions, everybody, whoever they are, must show their faces. It's Muslim exceptionalism that is becoming the problem.
No, it's not.
If we have the same rule for everybody, and at home, on the streets, I don't want people stopped. Okay?
We accommodate religious expression in this country. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses who don't want blood transfusions, Sikh people who want to wear turbans. We make exceptions, you know, in certain situations. And so, look, you know, I really want to reach out to the public and say, you've got nothing to fear from us.
But take up Yasmin's,
I was born in this country. I love this country.
Take up Yasmin's point that this is about exceptionalism. Take up Yasmin Alabai-Brown's point about this is about exceptionalism.
We accommodate, don't we, in this country, and in my country, Britain, we accommodate religious expression. And we do make exceptions for people. And there's nothing, and that's what I thought.
And we cannot destroy the minorities and the religious belief in the name of equality.
But what if the majority feel uncomfortable, feel uneasy and say they don't want it?
I think then the onus is on us as well, isn't it? I mean, to actually reach out. And I'm hoping that this is just going one step towards that, to say to people, look, you know, we're human beings just like you.
But if I may very quickly, religious freedom is an extremely important thing. And I think most people who would agree, I hope in this room, that Britain is the most tolerant place in the world to live, including as a Muslim.
Yeah.
But let's just add one thing to this, if I may. The issue of social interaction is very important, and not just to me, but obviously to a majority of the British people. Yeah. What I say tonight, what Yasmin says and other people say tonight, people see our faces. They know who said it. I'm sorry to say this, but nobody knows who you are. They can hear your name. They can't see you. If I say something stupid on television tonight, people know it's me saying it. If you do, with all due respect, you can disappear and no one knows.
No, we're not disappearing.
What does this say?
The
meaning of this thing is extremely important to address. The meaning of this thing is women are by nature dangerous to men and society. Therefore, they must be covered, they must be buried. That's the meaning of it. And that's what I cannot accept.
I mean, Fatima, come back on exactly that point, because we have spoken to women who say that they cover their faces because they don't want to incite passions among men. I mean, that is essentially Yasmin's point.
Well, look, essentially, I think, you know, that's Yasmin's opinion.
No, it's not my opinion.
Yes, it is. It is your opinion.
Ask the Taliban. Ask Taliban why they're imposing it.
Yasmin, you know, I'm really sorry. Maybe you haven't really met women in niqab. I would like to invite you out to my house. You know, you can see my face. We can sit together.
Another significant aspect of Murray's speech is his critique of multiculturalism and its impact on societal cohesion. He argues that the rapid pace of immigration has outpaced integration efforts, leading to segregated communities and cultural tensions. Murray contends that while diversity can be enriching, it must be balanced with integration to foster a cohesive national identity and social unity.
We can have a laugh.
Yes, but
and then I think it will change your opinion.
Come to your house and see your face, though, could he?
I can assure you I'm not going
He
to be
could meet
aroused.
my husband. No, you're welcome. You would be welcome to, come to my house.
Kola
My husband's
Hassan,
here.
can I
You can
ask,
meet
I mean,
him.
you used to wear
Yes,
the
I wore it for
niqab
about
and
2
then
years.
changed your mind. Why?
Two main reasons. One was theological. I made some attempt to actually study the whole notion of niqab in Islam, and I found that it's not actually mandatory. The hijab, the headscarf, is mandatory, but the niqab is not. It's part of Islamic society right from the beginning, but it's not mandatory. Just go and read a little bit of Ibn Kathir, for example.
Yeah, I'm a
Sheikh
scholar in
Albani's,
training, actually, so I do know that.
Sorry, let him
And
finish.
secondly, we have a social function in society. We are here to interact with society. We have to have a social consciousness. We have to benefit society. We have to interact with society. And I realized in those 3 years, I was a nobody. Nobody wanted to talk to me because they couldn't talk to me. I could smile until the cows come home, but nobody could see me smiling.
You see, that's a very good point, isn't it? Because you say you were a nobody,
Yes.
and yet many, many people in our poll disagreed with this notion that it was empowering in any way.
And I bet you there were many Muslims in that survey. Most Muslims don't
Yes,
care
I
for this
absolutely agree
either.
with that,
So,
yes.
so to say British as if it was, non-Muslims, most of us daren't speak out. When I do, I get death threats. I've had emails just this week
I am
from
sorry.
Niqab.
I am
He's
sorry,
from
that's
Niqab. He's
wrong.
calling me a prostitute. What is this freedom that we have?
No one
we can't even criticize what is not acceptable,
You are
actually.
free to
No, no,
criticize.
you're
I mean, what do you
anything.
make of that? Making, in a free democracy, making her views known and getting that sort of...
That's fine. We're
hatred.
happy about it.
I think
That's what-
the
I
issue that
welcome
we...
this debate.
But about the response that she gets.
Well, that's,
that's
wrong,
terrible.
obviously.
That's
It's terrible. It's
No,
absolutely
we
terrible.
acknowledge
It's
that,
not
and that's
acceptable.
we should be able to discuss it. We should be able to talk about it. And I acknowledge that people
No, I
feel
think one of the
uncomfortable.
problems is that the minute religion comes into it, what happens with the people who do wear the niqab often feel they are religiously superior and more pious than people who
Nobody
don't.
has
So
said
then
that
they
today.
immediately-
Nobody has said that
Sorry,
today.
Let me
but
just
I have
move it
had
out to the
many
audience,
times.
if you would. Sophia, I'm right in saying you also used to wear
Yes,
the
I did,
niqab, and
yes.
you again decided not to.
Yes.
Why
that's
was
right.
that?
The reason for that was that, that was a personal choice. I had an incident where niqab was pulled off me, and it really frightened me, and I became very, very anxious. But I feel very strongly about some of the things that's been said here. One of the things that you've been, for example, Yasmin, you've said about freedom of speech and how people are threatening you. I think that's completely unacceptable Islamically. We can't be responsible for all the Muslims and for all the people around the world. But I will say that just like you have the freedom of choice to express how you feel, we have the freedom of choice. I have a freedom of choice to not wear a niqab, and she has the freedom of choice to wear a
Did you feel
niqab.
that you were forced out of wearing it, or did
One
you
of the
come
things
to
I
a
did-
different view about it?
Yeah, one of the things it was a very personal choice for me. It meant a lot to me
It's
to
not-
wear the
This
niqab.
is not shopping in Primark. This has a meaning, and it's the meaning I'm arguing about. And actually,
but that's your perception.
Let me explain to you the meaning
Isn't the
then.
suggestion of your argument that
But
these
that's
women
your-
don't
Yasmin,
know
but that's-
what
No,
their
but
own
Yasmin,
choice is?
that's your
They
perception.
do know,
Fundamentally
absolutely
anti-feminist.
do know, which is why I'm objecting to it.
Jasmine, but that's your perception. You think that this is how you...
No,
Sophia,
I want to
my
ask you something
perception...
very specific, if you
Yeah.
would. You were a psychotherapist.
Yes, I'm a
But you
psychotherapist.
deal with women who are forced into wearing the niqab.
Another thing I would mention to regarding communication, in the 9 years of counselling with Sakina Muslim counselling that I do, all of my clients, majority of them are all we do phone counselling. And a lot of good work is done. I don't see their face, they don't see my face. So it's not really about looking at someone and really connecting with that person, because we don't connect with the outer, we connect with the inner.
So you think the loneliness that you talked about seeing in these women comes from where?
And not a single person, not a single woman.
Critics of Murray's viewpoint argue that his rhetoric risks stoking xenophobia and ignores the positive contributions immigrants make to British society. They highlight the cultural and economic benefits of diversity, citing studies that show immigrants contribute to economic growth, innovation, and cultural dynamism. Critics also argue that Murray's emphasis on preserving a static notion of British identity overlooks the fluid and evolving nature of national identities in a globalised world. Moreover, Murray's characterisation of immigration as a threat to British values and institutions has been challenged. Supporters of multiculturalism argue that Britain's strength lies in its ability to adapt and embrace diversity, enriching national culture rather than diminishing it. They advocate for policies that promote integration and inclusivity while celebrating the contributions of immigrants to British society. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and for more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.